Good morning, everybody. This is Rob Johnson with the Spotlight Media Network coming to you from Louisville High School. As we've got a special treat for you this morning, we have Olympic gold medalist Tim Mack here to talk about his journey to becoming an Olympic gold medalist and how perseverance, hard work, and determination will help you achieve all your goals. So we're going to get started here in just a few minutes as the students are filing in. So it's going to be a great time, and can't wait to get started. But again, this is Rob Johnson with the Spotlight Media Network, and we'll be with you here just momentarily. So enjoy.
Today, we have a special guest in the building. I will tell you that it's not often that we have a gold medalist walk through the doors of Louisville High School. Yes, give it up for Tim Mack. You don't have to be a gold medalist to understand that in order to get to that peak or that achievement, there are a lot of hurdles and bumps in the road. And when we talk about falling down and getting back up, you have to have resiliency like no other, okay? So this message is all about, I guess you could say, failing, because it's not whether or not you fail, it's whether or not you get back up. And if you fail fast and fail forward, okay? And so that's the message Tim Mack's gonna bring to you, and he just happened to be a 2004 gold medalist. Tim Mack, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me here. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be able to talk to you about my story. It's really an unusual story. I think everybody will get something out of it. But what I need to ask is, like, I need you to sort of like make sure that you're not preoccupied with anything. Make sure that we need you to almost get into like another little world here. It's kind of like a little world of imagination, okay? Because there's a lot of things here that are going to require, and anything great requires focus, you know what I mean? So hopefully nobody is going to be like on their phones. But here's the gold medal. If you want to check it out afterwards, you can. But it was, 2004 in Athens, the motherland of Olympic Games. So I'm not just shoving it in my pocket because I don't think put it really. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my journey, and there's a lot of aspects about my journey that are very unusual, that are very critical, and there's a lot of elements to it that I think can help anybody out in your situation trying to go after a worthwhile goal. Okay. Now, one question I want to ask anybody is, what if you could create your own future? Wouldn't that be cool? If if you could just imagine something to happen and then all of a sudden it happens. You know, I mean, you hear a lot of it. A lot of it is, you probably hear a lot of it about like manifesting things and, you know, trying to make your future. And I think you just mentioned something before, to fall forward, make sure that you're moving forward all the time. And it's totally true. And I never really thought about it. Like if I was in your situation, I probably wouldn't have thought about it much. Because, you know, you're in high school, you know, you have a lot going on, right? But I'm here to tell you an example, and hopefully this example can carry you forward, okay? And so what I need you to do is think about like the most wildest, like we'll say 4 years from now, or we'll say a dream goal. Everybody has a dream goal, I'm sure. So if you can think of a dream goal, because I was in this situation. I was in the situation of thinking about like where I wanted to go at some point. You know what I mean? I didn't do it till later, but if you could do it now, it would be unbelievable. But you got to think of something that so crazy that you could ever imagine that you're like, no, that's somebody else. That's always somebody else on TV. That's what they do. That's not me. You know what I mean? I could never do that. You know what I mean? You got to think of something like that, something that big, something that special, something that meaningful to you. Okay? Now imagine if you could create it. You know what I mean? That would be pretty unbelievable. And you could be like, I don't know, that's, you know what I mean? Because I was in the same situation, and I'll tell you the stories as we move along. But what I'm going to teach you today are some aspects and some things that can help you to do that. Okay. Now you need to develop these skills. It's going to take some time. You have to overcome a lot of failures along the way. These are a lot of things. I'm going to give you examples of how I did it, and not just because it's how I did it doesn't mean you have to do it exactly. But that's the whole thing about having somebody here to talk to is to give you an example of how they did something worthwhile to them. Okay. And by listening to my example, you're going to understand some of the skills that you are going to need. But you need to know about the journey first. A lot of people, I can tell you, so I'm blue in the face about some of these things, but you sort of have to know a little bit about me and how I found these skills and how I developed these skills, okay? Okay. So I did start vaulting at 13 years old. I didn't know what pole vaulting was really. I just know that I really hated to run distance. Sorry, distance runners. But I didn't like to run distance, and after distance practice, it was like a gym just like this, you know, and we would come in from running distance, and I would come in, and the pole vaulters would be over there in the corner, and I was like, are you kidding me? They didn't even have to run. So I was like, hey, coach, can I try that? And she was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So then, you know, I did that in middle school, and that was okay. I jumped maybe 7 or 8 feet, scored some points, had some fun with it. But I didn't have to run, so that was fine with me. And then, you know, I ended up going to St. Ignatius High School in Cleveland. Okay, I grew up in Westlake. So my dad went to Ignatius, my brother went to Ignatius. It was one of those things where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go to Ignatius too, okay? So I ended up going to St. Ignatius High School, and I kept vaulting, and I vaulted I vaulted like 9 feet my first year, but I really wanted to play football, and I really wanted to play baseball. Those were my 2 favorites, right? But unfortunately, it's pretty embarrassing, but I got cut from the football team. And I rode the bench too much in baseball, so I was like, forget this. Excuse me, you 3, you paying attention? Okay, so went to, sorry for that interruption. So sophomore year, I ended up, so I got cut from the football team, but sophomore year I played baseball. I did not do track and field. I just wanted to play baseball more. And I was a pretty good fielder, but you know what I mean, I just couldn't hit that great, so I rode the bench too much. So junior year, I ended up going back to track and field because I was like, well, track and field, I got my name in the paper a little bit, so I might as well do that. And so I continued to do it, jumped about 12 feet my junior year, and then senior year, I jumped a grand total of 13.6, okay, which is okay. But unfortunately, as you can see, I never went to the state meet. I didn't even have my school record. Okay, and I didn't get any scholarship offers. I mean, I was hoping to do something in college. I wanted to either do football or baseball or something. I was just sort of like, I wanted to do some sort of athletics. And so, unfortunately, nobody came knocking. No letters came in the mail. And I was like, well, I still kind of want to do this. So I was going to go to University of Toledo. They were going to offer me a walk-on spot, which meant I could go there and try out for a year. If I was good enough, then they would keep me on. So I went. I was going to go there. I had my school schedule. I had my ID. I had everything. I was going there. It was July. I'd already graduated from Ignatius. You know what I mean? And so over the summer, I was competing in some competitions, and so I met a coach from Malone College right up the road. Everybody knows where Malone is, right? So I met a coach from Malone College, and I was jumping 13.6, and he's like, where are you going? I was like, Toledo. I'm going to walk on over there. And he's like, well, why don't you come to Malone? And this is like July, so school starts, end of August. And I was like, is that even possible, So he's like, oh, yeah, we can get you in. We can try to figure it out. So I went to Malone. I liked it. And also there was a guy jumping 17 feet there. So I was jumping 13.6. This coach sort of wants me. This guy's jumping 17.6. I might as well go there because I'm going to get better, because I always sort of flourished when there was competition, you know what I mean? I was always somebody that record of Brian, who was the school record holder at the time. So after 3 years, my coach comes up to me and he's like, you know what? He was like, Tim, he's like, Coach Ralph, who, you know what? Malone College was probably the best decision I ever made somehow. But one thing that you got to realize is you got to follow your gut on a lot of decisions. And I made that, and with Toledo, I was like, oh, I'm going to follow my gut over here to Malone. I don't know why, but it just feels like it's going to be a better position, So I went there, but after 3 years, Coach Ralph was like, Tim, he's like, you need to go somewhere else. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm here, I'm going to graduate soon. He's like, no, he's like, you need to go somewhere else because, up here, obviously, you guys know, in pole vaulting and track and field, it's cold a lot of times. I would, for the school, I would jump 15 feet and I would win the competition, but I was like a 17-foot vaulter, but I wouldn't jump anymore because the weather was not very good. So he's like, you need to go down south, you need to go somewhere where you can train all year long and you can train in some good weather and you can jump against better competition. And I was like, okay. So yes, I did. I wrote letters. That's how long ago it was, sorry. But I wrote letters to all the major universities that I would have loved to have gone to. I wrote letters to University of Texas, and I wrote letters to Florida State, Tennessee, North Carolina, all the big players, Big Ten, SEC, ACC. And then Tennessee was the first people to get back to me. So I was like, you know what? They happen to have 3 vaulters that jumped 18 feet and 1 vaulter that jumped 19 feet. And I was like, I was only jumping 17 feet 3, and I was like, I'm going to go there. Because at this point I was jumping 17 feet. I still had 2 years of eligibility because I don't know if you know much about a redshirt year, but because I didn't compete for a year at Malone, I still had eligibility left. So I had 2 years of eligibility and jumping 17 feet. So any college would be like, heck yeah, come on over here, So I went to Tennessee, and after a few years at Tennessee, I ended up jumping 18.4 and beating those guys that were jumping better than me. And I ended up winning NCAA championships in indoor, okay? And so from there, it's like, what do you do? I was done. I was jumping 18.4, which is pretty good, but it's not like professional, you know what I mean? I could go professional, but there's not really any Nike or anybody giving me money to do it. I mean, if you do track and field, it's because you love it. And luckily, with one of the skills that I want to talk to you about today is luckily I had good people around me, and I don't know if that's a skill or if it was luck or what, but I had Coach Ralph, and he guided me to Tennessee, or guided me to Malone and then to Tennessee. And then my advisor, so you have a college advisor, and they tell you what to do and help you to figure out what classes you want to take. And so after I was done at Tennessee, he's like, what are you going to do now? Are you going to still compete? And I was like, well, I don't know. I guess I'm still good enough. He's like, I tell you what, come back in 2 weeks, and I might have something for you. So I came back in 2 weeks. He's like, I'm going to create an assistantship for you. So it was like a graduate assistantship. He's like, you're going to get your master's degree. So it's a 2-year assistantship. You're going to work for the track team, and you can still train for 2 years. And I was like, okay, then I guess I'm going to still pole vault, And so at that time, I did go to the 1996 Olympic trials. Very long time ago, I know, but and it was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I just got out of college, so I was in over my head, I mean, I wanted to make the Olympic team, but I didn't know I was even good enough to be close to even be considered to be an Olympian. You know what I mean? But I went to the Olympic trials, and I was in so far over my head, like on a pole vault runway. You know, when you're on the runway and you're getting ready for a jump, you should be having some good positive self-talk, just like most any other sport or anything, or if you're taking a test or whatever. But I was on the runway going, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss. And this is at Olympic trials, you know what I mean? I'm supposed to be like one of the better people in the country. And of course, what do you think happened? Of course, I missed. But even though that was a little heartbreaking, it wasn't the end of the world. I was going to still do this. I was still going to train, and luckily I was still at the University of Tennessee, and I could still use the facilities and everything and continue training there. So all was not too lost. Okay, and so at the 96 trials, that was sort of like, I was like, okay, I'm sort of Olympic caliber. I think I'm kind of like Olympic caliber. I could keep doing this, you know what I mean? And so I kept training. and kept getting better. So after a couple years, I finished my assistantship, and I was jumping like 18 feet 8, okay? Which was good, you know what I mean? But it wasn't fantastic, you know what I mean? So I jumped 18.8, and then but I was like, I'm still going to continue to train for 2 more years. And so for 2 years, I continued to train on my own, okay? Because there were still Olympic trials in 2000. I was like, this time I can really make it, you know what I mean? So I figured this was like the biggest part of my journey, which was like trying to deal with the failure of the 1996 Olympic trials, you know what I mean? And so I took that failure, and I learned that, you know what, if you fail at something, it's not like, oh man, woe is me, what am I going to do now? It's what can I do to get better in order to get that goal, you know what I mean? So I was learning how to deal with failure in many different ways, okay? So I continued to train, and so 1998 to 2000, I was creating my own workouts. I was basically on the track. Like if you ever walk by a track and you see it and it's empty and there's nobody out there, well, I would be out there running by myself, because in the track and field professional world, there's nobody there. I didn't have a full-time coach. It's basically you and you only. If I go to the weight room, I would have to show up on my own. If I go to the gymnastics, which we do a couple times a week, I would show up on my own. And so it was all based on what I wanted to do and how I wanted to get better, you know what I mean? And so by the year 2000, I was going to the Olympic trials. I jumped 19 feet that year. This was going to be my time. I jumped 19 feet. I'm 28 years old. I'm at the top of my game. I'm gonna make this Olympic team. You know what I mean? But what happens? I ended up getting 6th place. I was a 19-foot jumper in 2000, and I only jumped like 18 feet 2 at the Olympic trials. It only took 18 feet 5 to make the Olympic team. And this was kind of like the turning point. This was like, what else do I have to do? You know what I mean? I was 28 years old. I thought I did everything I possibly could. I had an umbrella to stay underneath the sun, you know, in the sweltering heat of Sacramento, California. And I was like, you will, like, I put it in athletic tape, and I wrote with black magic marker, you will make the team. And I was just like, I looked at that tape, and I was like, I'm done. I was like, I'm 28 years old, and right then I'm like, what am I going to do now? This is like my goal. I mean, this is everybody. Well, this is a lot of Olympians' goals. You know what I mean? I could quit. That was one of the things I could do, or I could continue going to the next Olympic Games. Okay, but that was going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of effort. And so I was like, at a crossroads. It was probably the worst moment of my life, because I was so upset at myself because I should have made that Olympic team, you know? But there's always, once you get over some of those things, once you take a little while and you can get over some of that, it's always going to drive you. What I found is, like, whenever I failed at something, it was always going to drive me. It was always going to drive me to get better, okay? And there were other failures along the way. Okay, there was a failure, and I really learned how to deal with failure and how to get better at dealing with it. You know what I mean? So at 2000, I really wanted to I was like, I'm going to make the 2004 Olympic team. That's what I'm going to do. That's my next goal, okay? I'm going to do everything I possibly can. I thought I did everything I could, but I didn't. I was like, I'm going to do everything I possibly can in order to make the Olympic team in 2004. At that point, it was just make the team, okay? I thought I was Olympic caliber enough, and so I did everything I possibly could. I ended up seeing a sports psychologist. I had a sports psychologist, Joe Whitney, and he helped me. And we worked on, in the year 2000, we worked on how I was going to be walking out into the Olympic Stadium in 2004. So I was like, Joe, what are you talking about? Like, this is crazy. I'm not even like top 5 or 10 in the world. He's like, no, you got to be ready when the time comes. And so we were already doing imagery of me walking out into the Olympic Stadium that wasn't even built yet, okay? So I had to get a picture. And so in 2000, I had to get a picture of the Olympic Stadium, and I had to image it from a picture, okay? And so we started to do a lot of things in 2000. I started to change my ways of training. I started to really try to do a little bit better with my strength training. And so all this training that I had to do, you have to do it, and you have to do it on your own. And so I got to the point where I even talked to like one of the masters of training, periodization training. Does anybody know what periodization training is? Well, it's a way to train at your best at different times of the year. And so I called this guy up. He wrote a few books, and I called him up, and I was like, and I asked him, I was like, hey, I need some help. I'm Tim Mack. I'm trying to make an Olympic team in 2004. And you know what? He was willing to help. And he helped me to create my training. And so it's like I was trying to grab anything I possibly could, okay? Another way that I dealt with failure was in 2001, Edmonton, World Championships. So I was doing a lot better. So 2000 and 2001, I ended up getting a little bit better, okay? I was getting a little bit better. I started jumping a little bit higher. I went to the 2001 Edmonton World Championships, okay? However, yes, it might sound great, but I got 9th place. And you might be like, well, 9th place, World Championships, that's not bad. Well, I was like, well, if they pay the top 8, it's bad, because they only pay the top 8, so I didn't make any money when I was there. So that really upset me. So what I did is, after that summer, after I learned how to deal with that failure, I watched the video, because there's video of everybody's jumps. And so I took the video from the TV footage, and I watched everybody's jumps, and I learned that I was doing something considerably different. Now, it's pole vault talk, so I'm not going to bore you with pole vaulting talk, but I found out through watching the video that I had to change something in how I was dropping the pole vault pole. Okay, and that was going to help me tremendously, but it was going to take a couple years, okay? So again, it's like, I have these failures, but I keep trying to deal with it, and I keep trying to figure out how to get to the next step, you know what I mean? Another way that I dealt with failure is in 2003 in Paris. So I continue to do well, and I continue to make the World Championships in 2003, and I jumped a meager height. It was about 18 feet 8 inches, but I was so upset because for some reason I couldn't keep my posture. I couldn't keep my posture and stay up, in my run-up. And I was so upset because I was like, I'm so good. Like, the Olympics are going to be in another year. What am I going to do now? You know what I mean? I'm getting 6th place at the World Championships. But what I did is, like, the next year when I was training for 2004, I remember I was pulling a sled. And anybody pull a sled in here? Any athletes pull a sled? Weight sled, football? Anybody? Okay. Well, anyway, so I was pulling this sled, and I had this shoulder harness, and I was pulling it like this. And this was the next year. And I did it so much that I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, I can't keep my posture because I pulled that stupid sled so much like this. It's really messing up my run-up. And so what I had to do is, I had to figure out a way to run with tall posture, because that's what pole vaulters do. You just have to run tall. We cannot be leaning over. So I developed my own sled. I got out a paper and pen, and I started figuring out a way to run within the sled. It was like a pole vault sled, okay? And so I didn't know how to weld or anything. I didn't have the correct welding materials, but I was like, you know what? I am going to take this to a welder. I took this stuff to a welder, and I fixed it, and I figured out how to run within the sled, which would help me, okay? So one of the major things that you need to realize is like one is like how to deal with failure. That's a very big thing. And what I always did is like, yeah, of course, you know, there's going to be failures along the way, but you just have to deal with it, and you have to figure out a way to overcome it, and you have to figure out a way to be a better person after it, and how to, if you have a goal and if you do fail at it, you figure out different ways in order to achieve that goal. So then we deal with goal setting. How many people in here set goals? Raise your hand high. Okay, how many people in here have set goals and keep them up? How many people here have set goals and have handwritten them and put them on paper? Okay, how many people in here have set goals, have handwritten them on paper, and the last thing is have put them somewhere where they see them every single day? Pretty good. But as you can see, it's a pretty small percentage, okay? And so that's one thing I learned about goal setting is I like to set the goals relatively high. Well, at my level, I was setting them high. You may want to set your goals that are pretty achievable so then you can attain them. I would set mine pretty high because I knew if I got there, then, or if I didn't get there, then I could do something else in order to get there, you know what I mean? And so I would set my goals high, use them as a roadmap, and I would set them every year. Out of 30 goals in 4 years, from the year 2000 to 2004, out of 30 goals, how many of you guys think I failed? Anybody have a number? Shout it out. Out of 30. 25, 7, failed at 7, failed at 25. Pretty failure, I'm pretty good failure. Anybody else, 10? Okay, so I failed at 19 of those 31 goals that I set throughout 2000 and 2004. You might have thought like, oh, this guy, he probably just like, well, Olympic gold medalist, he probably makes every single one of his goals. And I was like, no, very different than that. You know what I mean? I would set a goal, and if I didn't make it, I would sit down and figure it. I wouldn't lower it. That was one thing, is I wouldn't lower the goal. I would be like, what else can I do in order to get that? Maybe I was doing something wrong. Maybe I can eat better. Maybe I can sleep better. Maybe I can, maybe I can have a little bit better training regimen. You know what I mean? So I would learn how to goal set, and that's one thing. It seems pretty simple, but it's very difficult in nature because you got to be consistent. You got to be consistent with it, and then you got to hold yourself accountable after it. You don't just set it and then just be like, okay, that's fine. You know, if I didn't make it, I'm just going to forget about it, and I'm not going to set the next goal because then I don't want to deal with that. No, you want to consistently set. If you're like, you know what, I don't agree with that guy, you can lower him a little bit. You know what I mean? Use your imagination. A lot of times you're going to have to do that. I'm just here as an example of what I did. And again, what I did is not exactly how you want to do it, but there are some good examples of how somebody who did something unbelievable has achieved it. Okay. And I told you about the goal setting and about gold in Athens. Well, I didn't tell you about gold in Athens yet. I'm going to tell you about it now. I told the other group about gold in Athens. But the other thing was Joe Whitney, about having good people around me, and having Joe Whitney around me, my sports psychologist, is 4 years before the Olympics, he was like, yeah, you got to have a dream goal. And this is what I was talking to you guys earlier about, having a dream goal. And that dream goal was, he was like, you got to think of something where it's something that you don't think is going to be achievable. You know what I mean? And he's like, I want you to come back in a few days and let me know. And I was like, okay. So I took a few days, and I was like, oh man, I don't know what this is. I was like, I want to make the Olympic team, but is that enough? You know what I mean? And so I was like, is that enough? And I was like, well, maybe I could just medal. Medal would be cool, but then even then I didn't feel comfortable saying that. So after a while, I figured, you know what? The biggest thing I could ever think of is winning a gold medal. And even then, trust me, I was like 27 or 8 at the time, and I was like, even then, it was far-fetched. I even felt so uncomfortable. I was like, dude, what are you even thinking? That's always going to be somebody else. That's like somebody else you see on TV. They're gold medalists. You're not. You're going to maybe go to the Olympics. You know what I mean? But I was like, that's the biggest thing I could think of. And luckily, I did have good people around me, and I had Joe to tell me that, like, you have to go after these things. So I came back. He's like, good. Now I was like, Joe, I think I'm going to win. I think I can win a gold medal in Athens. And he's like, and I didn't believe it even when I told him that. Trust me. But he's like, okay, now we need a way to see it every day. And we need you to see it every day. We need you to think about it every day. And I was like, oh, I got to think about it too. Because I was so far away, I didn't even want to think about it. It was like sometimes something's so high, you just want to distance yourself from it, You just want to just say you did it and then hope it happens. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. So he's like, you got to see it every day. So I went back to my room, got my yellow notebook paper, turned down the light in my room, shut the door, because I didn't want anybody to know what I was doing. And I was just like, okay, I got to think of a way to do this. So I was like, well, maybe I can relate it to my email address. And so I was like, okay, maybe gold medal in Athens. And I was like, no, that's way over the top. I don't want people to know, I don't want people to think that, you know what I mean? And then I was like, gold medal in 2004. And I was like, that's not good either. Then I was like, gold, you will win gold. And I was like, no, that's not going to work either. But finally, after about 30 minutes of trying and erasing things on the paper, I came up with the email goldinathens@aol.com. So that was going to be my email for the next 4 years. And then it just doesn't pop up. I mean, you have to type that in every day. You know what I mean? It was torture sometimes typing that, because I was like, dude, you are so far away. Who do you think you are? You know what I mean? But it was pretty torturous, but it was the biggest thing I could think of. And it was going to be my guiding light, you know what I mean? And at that point, that's all I knew. I knew that I was going to go after something, and I needed to see it every day. And I also knew that my competitors, they're probably not going to type it every day, and they're probably not going to see it every day. So if I have that edge, that's at least one edge I can have on them, because I was not the fastest person out there, and I was not the strongest vaulter out there, or the most talented. Okay, but I was going to overtake them in different areas. And this was going to be one of them. So far, it's learning how to deal with failure. It's learning how to goal set. These things I'm learning over time, but I had to learn them because I was at my wit's end. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times you'll hear goal setting, you'll hear deal with failure, but you don't know the extent of it. Well, I'm telling you a little bit of the extent of how it can go. Other thing is, obviously you got to keep good people around you. I really try to keep good people around me that align with my goals. Okay? And if there was somebody that I knew and somebody that was not aligned with my goals, not like they had to be aligned with my goals, but if they took me further away from my goals, then it was as simple as just going like, well, I'm not going to spend much time with that person, okay? Luckily, I had a good group of people. There's a big group of people here. It's my family. Got friends up top. There was a manager, so now I was getting better over these 4 years. And my manager, Chris Lane, he's up at the top right. Joe Whitney, he's the guy on the left, middle left. He was my sports psychologist, of course, my coach. Jim B. Miller, he was the guy who was there for all my vault practices. He wasn't there every day, but he was there for vault practices, okay? And Vince Anderson, he was a great sprint coach. And what did I do? I used him, and I brought him my workouts, and he told me if the workouts were good or not. He was one of the best sprint coaches in the world, okay? Lower left is Tommy Moffitt. He's one of the best strength coaches in the country right now. Well, he was at Tennessee when I was there, but now he was at LSU. Now he might even be at Texas. I don't know where he's at, but he was the head strength coach there, and I would take all my workouts to him, and I'd be like, Tommy, what do I need to do different? So all these people, and then on the bottom right is Tinker Hatfield. He's one of the guys, anybody heard of Nike Air or Nike Free? Air Jordans? Him and his brother are basically the Nike people that developed all these shoes. And he was very instrumental in my growth too, especially toward the Olympic Games, because he actually is the one that made the shoes that I wore. So all these people had something to do with my journey. One other big thing that I learned over time is you got to motivate and inspire yourself. I mean, maybe this talk right here, this will help for maybe a day. Maybe it'll get you motivated. Maybe it'll teach you something. But over time, you guys are going to have to try to do this. You're going to have to continue things. You're going to have to continue to motivate yourself on your own. I did it through many ways. Movies, Gladiator. Anybody like Gladiator? There's a new one now, but one of my favorite movies. I would watch that. A lot of books. Quotes were one of my favorite things. There's one from Yoda. No, try not, do or do not. There is no try. I mean, I would put quotes everywhere, and I realized I was at my wit's end. I was going to have to make this next team. You know what I mean? I had 4 years to do it, And so I had to continually motivate myself, okay? Because you are going to get bored, you are going to get lazy, you're going to want to quit, but you can get motivation anywhere. I was like a motivation sponge. Anybody ever see the movie? Now, it's an older movie, but Any Given Sunday, it's like a football movie. Al Pacino's in it. No? Anyway, well, I'm dating myself, but so there's a part in the movie where there's a wide receiver, and before they prepare for the game, the wide receiver goes up to the mirror and he looks at himself dead in the pupils before the football game, and he's like, "You're the greatest wide receiver to ever live." And then he'd walk away and he'd keep looking at himself. And it was just a part of the movie, like he would say that before the movie, or before they would go out and play, because that would motivate him, and it would tell him that he's the greatest wide receiver in the world. And I was watching this movie and I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I can do that. You know what I mean? And remember, I was at my wit's end. I had to believe everything. I had to try to find different ways to motivate and inspire myself. And so I went into the mirror in my living room and I was like, you are the greatest pole vaulter to ever. I mean, I couldn't even look at myself in my own eyes. I didn't even believe it. I believed it like 1%. You know what I mean? I continually tried to do that over those years. You know, every few weeks, every few months, and I was like, you are the greatest pole vaulter to ever live. And I was like, don't believe it yet. I'd be brushing my teeth, be done brushing my teeth, and I'd say it again. Then there was a day where I was like, you know what? I just popped up. I had this random thought. I'm like, you're going to do it right now. And I looked at it. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I was like, you are the greatest pole vaulter to ever live. And I just saw the black of my pupils and the green of my eyes, and I just kept walking away, and I was like filled with just motivation and rage, like I was going to do this. And I was like, I think this is good. I don't know. And I was like, don't freak out. You know what I mean? Nothing to see here, folks. You know. And I was like, I think I believe it now. I think this is what it means by believing it. You know. And then I would do it again, and I might not be able to do it, but you know what I mean? It was just the fact that I was doing it. I wasn't even close to the best in the world. I didn't even know what I was thinking. I wasn't close to gold medal in Athens, and I didn't know what I was thinking. But it's the movies, it's the books. I read a lot of books, like Tony Robbins. If anybody ever heard of him, he's like one of the best motivators in the country. If you don't know him, he's got some. Well, now you can see everything online now, but I had to do a lot of the books. But there were also other times where when I was lifting weights, I would get so bored of it because I'd have to do it all the time. I would have to just imagine to get every ounce of energy I could out of myself. So I would imagine muscle fibers contracting when I was like doing pull-ups or something. I just had to get everything out of every single rep. Now I was taking it to the extreme, but I was also towards the end of my career, and I had a major goal, and it was the goal of gold in Athens. Okay, nothing was off limits. Okay. There we go. And then the biggest thing is facing your fears, facing those demons, okay? That was one of the biggest things I had to face because let's face it, it was like I wasn't close to that point. I didn't want to think about how far away I was to being a gold medalist or the best in the world at something. But I just knew I had to reinforce it, and I had to tell myself it, and I had to continually tell myself that I would be it, okay? One, by seeing goals every day. That battles your fears. Motivating yourself each day. That battles those fears or those thoughts that say, no, you can't do this, okay? Imagining my muscle fibers, instead of thinking about what am I doing here in the weight room, I was like, no, I'm going to get more out of this. So I would have to imagine myself doing with the most perfect technique possible, okay? That would allow me to face my fears. I would not take shortcuts. And it was just me, like if I went out to a sprint workout and I had to jog around the football field, okay, you guys? This is how far I would take it. I was like, did it matter? Maybe not. Did any of these things matter? Maybe one thing didn't, but they all mattered a little bit. And so by not taking shortcuts, I would jog around the football field, and just because I would not take any shortcuts to myself mentally, if this was the corner of the end zone and I had to run around it, I didn't cut the corner. Just to myself, over time, I was like, You know, I wouldn't allow myself to cut that corner, okay? Just because, did that matter? I don't know, but I was using my imagination. And I was trying to work towards something that really mattered, okay? So as these 4 years move on, I have a meeting with Joe Whitney, okay? All those things can battle face your fears, and I think Joe knew that there was still one demon that I had in my head, and that was not making the Olympic team, okay? So 4 years of gold in Athens, 4 years of watching the videos, 4 years of motivating myself each day, 4 years of imagining my muscles contracting throughout workouts, 4 years of developing my own workouts, 4 years of calling the best periodization training specialists in the world, talking to all those support staff people, 4 years of that, okay? And it was all towards gold in Athens, right? So I go to Joe Whitney one day, I get to his office, he's like, how you doing, Tim? I'm like, doing pretty good, Joe, thanks for asking. Everything's going great, I'm training great, I'm feeling good, everything's going well. He's like, good. He says, I gotta tell you something. I was like, what's that? You know what I mean? Top of the world. It's like this is about a month before the Olympic trials. So obviously motivation and being positive helps. He's like, you know what? There's a chance you might not make the Olympic team. And I was like, what did you just say? He's like, yeah, it just might not be your day. And I was like, I need to get out of here. I need to go. I need to get out of here. You know what I mean? My back got real hot. My ears got real warm. I was like, this is not good. I'm done. I'm not going to make it. I was like, what's all this talk about, you know, gold in Athens and imagining myself walking out there being the most mentally tough person out there? And he's like, you know what? He's like, hang on a second. He's like, Tim, he's like, tell me. He's like, you got to tell me one thing before you get too excited here. He's like, tell me one thing. Tell me why you will make the Olympic team. And so I went off on a rant for about 10 minutes. I was pissed because I couldn't believe that he said that I would not make that because of everything I did. And I went on and I was like, Joe, I was seeing my goals every day. I was motivating myself every day. I was looking at myself in a stinking mirror, for crying out loud. If anybody saw me, they probably thought I was nuts. And then I was like imagining my muscles, and I was doing all this other stuff, and I was saying the greatest pole vaulter every day. I wasn't taking shortcuts for crying. I mean, I jumped over the line. I didn't even cut the freaking corner. I was like, what the heck, man? I did all this stuff, and now you're telling me I'm not going to make the Olympic team? He's like, no, you really believe you will, right? And I was like, you're gosh darn right I do. He's like, good, I just wanted to make sure you knew that. And I was like, that's pretty smart, man. I walked out of there like 10 feet tall, you know what I mean? So it wasn't really about like, it started to be less about the gold medal, which is really weird about the whole journey, okay? So, how much time we got? We good on time? We got 10 minutes? Okay, so real quickly, I'll take you through the trials. Well, so I go to the Olympic trials, feeling great. I go to the Olympic trials. My best at that point is 19 feet 2. I go in and I end up clearing and winning the U.S. Olympic trials at 19 feet 4. It was U.S. Olympic trials record. But of course, there weren't that many easy parts. There were times where I was down to my 3rd attempt, and if I missed it, I wouldn't have made the Olympic team. But it was stay focused, stay in the process, trust what you're doing, stay in the process, you know? So I made the Olympic team finally. I was an Olympian, you know what I mean? I was like, I'm one step closer, but that's just where things start. That's just when a lot of these demons start, a lot of distractions start, okay? So, you know, I make it to the Olympics and we had about 2 weeks. When I got to the Olympic Games, we had about 2 weeks. So it was a lot of time because we went really late on the Olympic schedule. So I was like, this is not good. So I had to script out every single day, just for me. I scripted out when I was waking up, when I was going to bed, when I was going to eat, when I was going to train. I even scripted out when I was not going to think about anything and not worry about anything. Okay? Now, granted, this is at the end of my journey here. So I was taking everything to the extreme edge, okay? If I was sitting at the Olympic Village, which can be there's a lot of distractions, and so I was rooming with the people I was competing with, 2 other American vaulters. And they'd be like, hey Tim, let's go eat lunch. And if I had scheduled 12 o'clock and it was 11:58, I was like, No, I'll be there in a few minutes. I put my headset on and I continued watching like Lord of the Rings or whatever I was watching, okay? Because I was like, I have this schedule. This schedule's gonna work. Nobody else is gonna mess with it. You know what I mean? If anything's gonna happen, then I'm gonna be the one responsible, not anybody else, okay? So I would take walks, and I would just, because it got really, there's so many distractions, and I didn't want to get away from why I was really there. And so I would go, I had some cues that I had to do. And through working with Joe, it was just about, the Olympics was not about the gold medal. It was becoming less about the gold medal and more about the process, okay? Which is a really strange way to think about it. But I would take walks by myself, and I was just like, you're going to make this team, you know what I mean? You worked your tail off, you're going to keep your posture, you're going to hit your arms, and you're going to do this. And I was just kept going over and over and telling myself that. And then I would go eat with everybody, and I'd be like, hey, everybody, how's it going? You know what I mean? Good to see you, good to see you. How you feeling, you know? But I would take the moment just to kind of like it to myself, to remind myself why I was there, what I was doing, okay? And so there were other things. The shoes, and I told you about Tinker Hatfield, the Nike shoes. And I never changed shoes before a competition, ever. But the people at Nike, I was a Nike athlete at the time, I had my foot fitted like months before that, but he came there at the Olympic trials. This is like a week before at the Olympic Games, and it was like a week before, and he was like, here are your new shoes, and I was like, I don't want to change shoes, but he flew from Nike, from Oregon, to the Olympics, and had a box with these brand new shoes, and I was like, I gotta try them on. I was like, okay, cool. You know that uncomfortable feeling you get, like I don't really want to do this, but I'm gonna do it. But I put them on, and they were really cool. They were red Nikes. You know, they were fit exactly to my foot. Had a spike plate in them that made them real stiff and rigid, and had gold on the back and silver on them. They were pretty cool, and I was like, man, if I don't wear these things, he's gonna kill me. But so I put them on, but right as soon as I put them on, I was like, maybe it was my mind telling me, but I was like, these things fit phenomenal, you know? So about having good people around you, it's like he came there, but you know what? I went with my gut. I was like, these shoes feel great, and I didn't think anything of it. And I got right back on my task, okay? And then you go to the Olympic Games now. So all of this time, everything I've been telling you is coming down to this final moment, okay? Olympic Games. Now there's a preliminary and a final. I'll go a little bit quicker, so I make it through the preliminary, okay? That's the top 40 people in the world, okay? And you have to be in the top 14 to make the final. So I was able to make it to the final, which was 2 days later, okay? So 2 days later, everybody comes back, and basically you gotta get in the top 3. So the pressure is very high. I mean, I was telling myself over and over again, stay up and hit your arms, stay up and hit your arms. And that doesn't mean anything to anybody here really, but those are just my cues. And you would have probably something different in whatever you're doing. But so the bars have a certain sequence that they go, okay? So at one point in the competition, I have a miss. So then that automatically drops me down the list, okay? But I keep clearing bars as the competition goes on, right? So 19 feet 2, I clear that. And there's some other people that miss it, and all of a sudden I'm in medal contention. And I knew it because there's only 3 people left. Obviously, if there's 3 people left in the competition, you're gonna get a medal. But at that point, I was not thinking about the end result. I was not thinking about the outcome. If I thought about the outcome, if I looked up to the crowd, I wore a Nike visor like this because I did not want to look up into the crowd, because if I thought about the gravity of that situation, that would have been it. You know, and I would have been done. So the bar's at 19.2, I know I'm in medal contention. Bar goes from 19 feet 2 inches to 19 feet 4 inches, okay? So at this point, there's only 2 people left, me and Toby, who's the other American, and was sort of like the favorite. He had jumped higher than me that year. So I jumped 19.4 on my second. He jumps 19.4 on his second, but he's still ahead of me. I'm in silver position because I missed earlier in the competition. He didn't, okay? So if we jump the same height, I'm gonna get silver, which isn't bad by any means, don't get me wrong. But not if you have gold in Athens for 4 years, you know? So the bar goes to 19.6, Olympic record. I never cleared it before. It was a personal best, okay? 70,000 people in the crowd. All these 4 years are coming down to a couple seconds here. Okay, there's a time clock. You gotta go within 60 seconds, or you know what I mean, or it's a failed attempt. Okay, so 19.6, I'm before Toby goes, so I go. My first attempt. Stay up in arms, stay up in arms, stay up in arms. I go and I miss my first attempt. Okay, went off to the left a little bit. Wasn't that big of a deal because you get 3 attempts, which is good in pole vaulting. So can't be perfect every time. Toby goes and he misses. If Toby makes that and I miss it, I'm in silver. If we both make it, then it goes higher and we have to go for gold again. So I had to clear this bar and he had to miss it. Second attempt goes, I go, I miss. I just remember hitting the pit, getting up and landing, and I was just like, it's like my soul left my body. I was like, oh my God, I got one more attempt left. I might get silver, oh my God. And it's like the worst feeling that you could ever imagine. And I'm sure most of us have been in that situation where I was like, there's no way out, I'm done. But then the one thing that came to me at that moment when I never thought when I made it was gold in Athens. You know what I mean? I did it every day to type it to keep me focused. But at that moment, it hit me and I was like, you idiot, you know what I mean? Because I would self-talk myself. And I was like, dude, your email for 4 years was gold in Athens, not silver in Athens. And I was like, you get back on there. You train, you know what I mean? You trained your tail off. All the positive self-talk I could get started coming streaming in now. And so Toby misses his second. So 1 jump left for each of us. I'm at the end of the runway. Time's winding down. Clock's going down. There's like 20 seconds left. 19, 18. You know what I've been through already. Okay? 70,000 people are all clapping. They all clap in unison because they want to give you the energy. And I'm just like, this is it. You know what I mean? But I was really thinking, stay up in arms, stay up in arms, stay up in arms. Because remember, in 8 years before that, I was thinking, well, I was at the Olympic trials, and I was thinking, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss. But this time, I was thinking, stay up in arms, stay up in arms. I had to trust the process. I had to trust my cues. Luckily, I had good people around me. I was trusting what Joe told me. So I go, full bore, full speed. The clock's running down. I go to jump off the ground, and there was like something wasn't right. Something was wrong. And I was just like, my body just like self-corrected. And before I know it, I'm totally, completely upside down, which is what happens in the pole vault. And I'm over the crossbar. And the crossbar, I mean, when you're up there, you don't know you're up there. You don't see yourself up there 19 feet, 8 inches. You're just like, see the crossbar. But I did a lot of gymnastic stuff to concave my chest to get away from it. And so I was like, I'm like this close all those 4 years, and it was like a millimeter. I think I grazed it. I think my shirt grazed the bar because I could tell it was like jostling a little bit. It was that slow. Everything was happening that slow. I could almost see the bar just going like this. But I knew, I was like, when I was coming down, I was like, I didn't hit that thing hard enough for it to displace, you know? And it stayed up there. I landed, I hit the pit, and I was just like, you know what I mean? I was just like, all that 4 years just came out like a rocket, you know what I mean? Like my head popped off, you know? But then reality struck again, and I was like, idiot, Toby makes it. If Toby makes it, you're in second again. And so I was like, you gotta, come on, man. Get back on it. You gotta keep your posture, you gotta hit your arms, okay? So at this moment, I knew Toby was gonna go, and so I just laid down, put my feet up to try to like freshen my legs up a little bit. It was just a little trick that I learned over time. And I knew he was gonna go, so Toby is getting ready. The crowd's clapping. I'm like, okay, Toby's gonna make it. Toby's gonna make it, and the bar's gonna go up to the next height, and you're gonna make the next height. Toby's gonna make it, the crowd's gonna go nuts. So the crowd's going nuts. Toby's ready to go. The clock's running down. Toby goes. I didn't watch it because I didn't really like to watch anybody else jump. It just, I didn't want their image in my head. So when he was going down this way, I just turned around and I was getting ready. I was like, the crowd's gonna go nuts. Toby's gonna make it. The crowd's gonna go nuts. You're gonna clear the next bar. And then all of a sudden I heard like a good job clap, not a, oh my God, I can't believe you made it clap. And so I looked at him and I was like, oh my God, the bar's not up. I was like, it was as quiet as this in my head. I was like, what the heck is going on? Is this the end? And I was like, I think you just won Olympics. It's almost like I didn't want to think about it. Because at that point, I was so far, winning the Olympics wasn't about it winning gold medal anymore. It was just something that came along with trying to get the most out of myself in an event, okay? And so that was what was so special about the whole thing, and it carried over into the Olympics, into the medal ceremony too. where I wasn't thinking about how cool it was winning Olympics. It was about all of the things I learned. It was about all the good people that I had around me. It was about facing the failures that I had to overcome. It was about facing my demons that I had to face numerous times. These things were like rushing past me like the national anthem was going, and all these little instances were rushing by me like I was in a time warp. And it was about the good people around me. It was about making the goals, and it was about setting goals, okay? And so that was what is the most important thing about this whole story, is that it really wasn't about the gold medal at all. It was actually about the journey and about everything that happened throughout the journey. And I'll leave you with this. This is one quote that really I thought was important to bring up, because it's the quote of the Olympic Games. The most important thing about the Olympic Games is not to win, but to take part. The important thing in life is not the triumph, but the struggle. The essential thing is not to have conquered, but have fought well. And when I actually didn't know that quote beforehand, but years after I saw that quote, Pierre de Coubertin, he's like the founder of the Olympic Games, and that was like the quote, and I was like, you know what? That's for sure. That's the truth. So remember, it's not about the triumph, but it's about the struggle, and it's not to have conquered, but it's to have fought well. So that's my story. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you can get something out of it. I really appreciate your time.
Hey guys, as I was listening to Tim speak, there were messages and messages running through my head, like, here's how I'm going to close with you guys. Here's the lasting, and there are too many. Hopefully you picked up some of those messages. One, it's okay to struggle, okay? If you find yourself in a tough spot, that's okay. All that means is you're going to come out at the other end tougher, okay? It's okay to struggle and be in the fight. The other thing is, he had a dream, and many of you have a dream, okay? The difference between a dream and a goal is a timetable. Don't wish for anything. You got to go out and get it. I would say obsessed with it, okay? So those are the two big things. Set goals, okay? Get yourself a plan and achieve great things, okay? Let's give him another round of applause. Okay, guys, we are gonna head back to second mod, grab your phones and your book bags, and head to third mod.
So that was our assembly on Tim Mack, an Olympic journey. So what a great time we had last night, or this morning, sorry. I'm still challenged from the Leopard basketball game last night. So I want to thank everybody for coming on. We had a great time this morning. And I hope you enjoyed it. It was actually very uplifting, very nice message, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So for all of us here at the Spotlight Media Network, have a great day. We'll see you in a gymnasium or stadium near you. Have a great afternoon, everybody.